I was standing in the living room of two complete strangers when Walter Ostrowski collapsed to the floor, clutching his chest. His wife Dolores was screaming his name over and over. I was dialing 911 with shaking hands, trying to remember the address I'd only seen once on an envelope. And within 7 minutes, an ambulance and 2 FBI agents were pulling into the driveway of this small blue house in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. The man I was supposed to marry in 6 weeks? He wasn't who he said he was, and these two broken people, the woman crying on the floor, the man struggling to breathe, they weren't the dangerous alcoholics he'd warned me about for 2.5 years. They were his victims, just like me. My name is Hannah Calderon. I'm 32 years old and I work as a dental hygienist at a small family practice in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I've been cleaning teeth and pretending to believe patients when they say they floss daily for about 11 years now. I'm good at my job. I thought I was good at reading people too. Turns out I was wrong about that. I met Garrett Ostrowski at a friend's birthday party in March of 2021. He was tall, dark-haired, confident, without being arrogant. He laughed at my jokes, even the bad ones. He remembered details about my life that I'd only mentioned once. He brought me soup when I was sick and flowers for no reason at all. After 6 months of dating, I thought I'd finally found the one. After a year, I was sure of it. After 2 years, he proposed with a ring he'd secretly had designed based on a vintage style I'd admired in a magazine. The man paid attention. The man cared, or so I thought. There was only one strange thing about Garrett, and he explained it so well that I accepted it completely. He refused to introduce me to his parents. Not wasn't ready, refused. The first time I brought it up, about 4 months into dating, his whole face changed. His eyes got this faraway look, like he was seeing something painful that I couldn't see. He told me his parents were severe alcoholics. He said they chose vodka over their own son when he was 19 years old. He said he hadn't had a real relationship with them in 15 years, and that asking him to reconnect would be like asking him to reopen the worst wound of his life. He actually used those words, the worst wound of my life, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I'd seen addiction destroy families. My own Uncle Gary spent 20 years in and out of rehab before finally getting sober at 53. I understood that some family relationships are too broken to fix, so I let it go. I told myself I was being supportive. I told myself I was respecting his boundaries. My mother, Patrice Calderon, was not so understanding. From the very first dinner where I brought Garrett home, she watched him like a hawk watches a mouse in a field. She smiled. She was polite. But afterward, when he'd gone home, she sat me down in her kitchen with 2 cups of chamomile tea and said words I'll never forget. A man who hides his family is hiding something else, Hannah. Mark my words. I told her she was being paranoid. I told her she was judging someone she barely knew. I told her that not everyone has a perfect family like ours. And that was unfair of me, because our family isn't perfect either. We argued. For the first time in years, we really argued. She said she just wanted to protect me. I said I didn't need protection from a man who treated me better than anyone ever had. We didn't speak for almost 2 weeks after that. Looking back, I wish I'd listened, but that's the thing about hindsight. It's always crystal clear when it's too late to matter. When Garrett proposed, he made it clear that the wedding would be small. Just us and your family, he said. I don't need anyone from my past. You're my future. At the time, I thought it was romantic. He didn't want the circus of a big wedding. He didn't need 300 guests and a 12-piece band. He just wanted me. But small details started to bother me. Things I pushed aside because I didn't want to see them. Garrett worked from home as a financial consultant. He had flexible hours, took calls in the other room with the door closed, and never really explained what he did in concrete terms. When I asked, he'd say things like portfolio management and investment strategy for private clients. It sounded impressive. It sounded vague. I have a degree in dental hygiene, not finance, so I figured I just didn't understand his world. He also drank more than I expected. Not falling down drunk, never that. But whiskey at 5 in the afternoon, wine with every dinner, a beer while watching the game, then another, then a third. For a man who said he was traumatized by growing up with alcoholic parents, he seemed remarkably comfortable with a glass in his hand. I mentioned it once, gently, and he laughed it off. Social drinking isn't the same as addiction, babe. I know my limits, and I let it go. I was very good at letting things go. The wedding planning added stress to everything. I've learned that the words simple and wedding cannot exist in the same sentence without the universe laughing at you. The moment you say, I want something small, someone hands you a catalog with 17 shades of white napkins and asks which one matches your vision. We booked the Radisson-Lackawanna station in Scranton. Beautiful historic building, $347 per person for the dinner package. And that was considered reasonable. My mother offered to help pay, which meant my mother offered to help have opinions about everything. But through all the stress, all the planning, all the napkin debates, one thought kept nagging at the back of my mind. In 6 weeks, I would marry a man whose parents wouldn't be there, whose friends wouldn't be there, whose entire past was a closed door he refused to open. 3 weeks before my wedding, something happened that finally made me turn the handle on that door. And what I found on the other side changed everything. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read everything, and your support means more than you know. Now, back to the story. It started with a phone call that wasn't meant for me. Garrett was in the shower. His phone was on the kitchen counter, buzzing over and over again. I wasn't snooping. I want to be clear about that. I was making coffee, and his phone kept vibrating against the granite like an angry wasp. I glanced at the screen just to see if it was urgent. The caller ID said, Wilkes-Barre Medical Center. I didn't answer. But when Garrett came out of the bathroom, towel around his waist, I mentioned it casually. Hey, you had a bunch of missed calls from some medical center in Wilkes-Barre. Everything okay? I will never forget the way his face changed. The color drained out of it like someone had pulled a plug. For about 2 seconds, he looked like a man who'd seen a ghost. Then he recovered, smiled. Must be a wrong number or spam. Those places are always calling about insurance scams. I nodded. Let it go. I was still very good at letting things go, but later that night, when Garrett was asleep and I was lying awake staring at the ceiling, a thought kept circling in my brain like a dog chasing its tail. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, is 27 miles from Scranton, about 35 minutes by car. Garrett had always told me his parents lived in Columbus, Ohio. Columbus is 7 hours away. Different state, different world. Why would a hospital 35 minutes from our apartment be calling my fiancé, a man who supposedly had no connection to anyone in that area? After that night, I started watching Garrett more carefully, not snooping through his things, not checking his phone, just paying attention in a way I hadn't before. And I noticed things. His drinking was getting worse. Not dramatically, but steadily. The 5 o'clock whiskey became 4 o'clock. The one beer during the game became 3 or 4. One afternoon, I went to put my gym bag in the trunk of his car and found a half-empty bottle of Jameson wrapped in a gym towel, tucked behind the spare tire. The irony hit me like a punch to the stomach. This man had painted his parents as hopeless alcoholics who destroyed his childhood. He'd used their supposed addiction as the reason I could never meet them. And here he was, hiding whiskey in his car like a college kid sneaking drinks past his RA. I told myself he was stressed, wedding planning, work pressure. Everyone copes differently, right? That's what I told myself. Then there was the money. I logged into our joint savings account one Tuesday evening, the account we'd opened together for our future, for the down payment on a house, for the life we were building. We'd been contributing to it for over a year. There should have been $34,000 in that account. There was $26,000. $8,000 had vanished. When I asked Garrett about it, carefully, not accusingly, he was smooth as butter on a hot pan. Oh, babe, I moved it into an investment opportunity. Short-term thing. A buddy of mine has this deal, and I couldn't pass it up. It'll triple in 6 months, I promise. No paperwork, no documentation, no name of the buddy. Just trust me. And I trusted him. I hated myself a little for it, but I trusted him. About 2 weeks before the wedding, I was looking for my passport. We were planning a honeymoon in Costa Rica, and I needed to make sure it wasn't expired. I remembered putting it in Garrett's closet in a box with other important documents. I found the passport, but I found something else too. In a shoebox behind his winter boots, the fancy leather ones he never wore, there was an old photograph. It showed a younger Garrett, maybe 22 or 23, standing between two people at what was clearly a graduation ceremony. He was wearing a cap and gown. The two people beside him were beaming with pride. Behind them, I could see a banner that said, Wilkes-Barre University. I turned the photo over. On the back, in neat handwritten cursive, someone had written, Garrett's graduation day, Wilkes-Barre University, 2011. We're so proud of you. Love always, Mom and Dad. I stared at that photo for a long time. The woman had kind eyes and a warm smile. The man had his arm around Garrett's shoulders, the way proud fathers do. These people did not look like severe alcoholics who had abandoned their son. They looked like parents. Normal, happy, loving parents who were proud of their kid. I've met alcoholics in my life. My Uncle Gary once tried to fist fight a lawn flamingo at Thanksgiving dinner because he thought it was looking at him funny. These two people in the photo looked like they alphabetized their spice racks for fun. When Garrett came home that evening, I showed him the photograph. I was gentle about it, careful. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just said, I found it and asked about it. And Garrett's eyes filled with tears. He told me the photo was from before his parents got bad. He said looking at it was painful because it reminded him of the people they used to be, before alcohol changed them. He said he kept it hidden because he couldn't bear to look at it but couldn't bear to throw it away either. Then he looked at me with those wet eyes and said, You're just like everyone else, Hannah. You don't believe me. You think I'm making up my own trauma. I felt about 2 inches tall. I apologized. I hugged him. I put the photograph back where I found it and promised myself I would never doubt him again. That lasted about 4 days. My mother called on a Thursday evening. Her voice had that particular tone, the one that meant she'd done something she knew I wouldn't like. Hannah, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen before you get angry. She'd run a background check on Garrett, some online service that cost $39. She said she couldn't sleep at night, couldn't stop worrying, and she'd finally given in to her instincts. There are gaps, she said. Addresses that don't match what he told you, employment history that doesn't add up, and something called a possible alias flag. Hannah, I really think you need to look at this. I lost my temper. I said things I'm not proud of. I accused her of trying to sabotage my happiness because she couldn't stand to see me build a life with someone she hadn't personally vetted. I told her if she couldn't support my marriage, maybe she shouldn't come to the wedding. We didn't speak for 5 days after that, but the seed was planted. And no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, that seed was growing roots. That Friday night, lying next to Garrett while he snored softly beside me, I made a decision. If he wouldn't introduce me to his parents, then I would introduce myself. Whatever I found, alcoholics, addicts, broken people, hostile strangers, at least I would know the truth. I just had no idea how bad the truth would be. Garrett announced on Wednesday that he had a financial conference in Philadelphia, 3 days, Thursday through Sunday. He'd be staying at a hotel downtown, meetings all day, networking dinners at night. He packed a suitcase, kissed me goodbye, and told me to try not to miss him too much. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I felt something shift in my chest. This was my chance. 3 days with him gone. 3 days to find out who my fiancé really was. I took Friday off work. Told my boss I had wedding errands to run. She gave me a knowing smile and said she remembered how crazy the final weeks before her own wedding had been. If only she knew what kind of errands I was actually planning. Thursday night, I went into Garrett's home office. The room was neat, organized, unremarkable, except for the locked drawer in his desk. I'd noticed it months ago, asked about it once. Tax documents, he'd said. Boring stuff. The accountant has the key, but I'd seen Garrett use a small key to open that drawer late one night when he thought I was asleep. I searched for almost an hour before I found it, tucked into the inside pocket of his winter coat, the one hanging in the back of the hall closet. A small brass key, unremarkable, easy to overlook. My hands shook as I slid it into the lock. Part of me expected the drawer to be full of exactly what he said. Tax returns, bank statements, boring financial documents. Part of me hoped for that, because the alternative meant everything I believed about my life was a lie. The drawer contained about 15 letters, bundled together with a thick rubber band, the return address on every single one. Walter and Dolores Ostrowski, 247 Maple Ridge Lane, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, 18702. Not Columbus, Ohio. Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, 35 minutes away. I sat on the floor of his office and read every letter. They spanned from 2021 to 2023. Some were short, just a few lines. Others went on for pages, and every single one broke my heart. Please, son, we don't understand what we did wrong. Garrett, we haven't heard from you in 3 months. Are you safe? Are you eating enough? Please just let us know you're alive. Your father cries at night. He thinks I don't hear him, but I do. Whatever happened between us, we can fix it. Please come home. We love you. We will always love you. Nothing you could ever do would change that. Please, Garrett, please. These were not letters from alcoholics who had abandoned their son. These were letters from parents desperate to reconnect with a child who had abandoned them. Everything Garrett told me was a lie, every single word. Friday morning, I woke up at 7, showered, dressed in jeans and a plain blue sweater, and got into my car, a 2018 Toyota Camry with 67,000 miles and a crack in the windshield I'd been meaning to fix for 8 months. I typed the address into my phone's GPS, 247 Maple Ridge Lane, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. 27 miles, 34 minutes. I had been living 34 minutes away from the truth for 2.5 years. The drive felt surreal. I kept running scenarios in my head. Maybe the letters weren't what they seemed. Maybe his parents really were manipulative, and the loving words were a tactic to lure him back. Maybe I would knock on that door and find exactly the nightmare Garrett had described. Drunk, hostile, dangerous people who would confirm everything he'd told me. I almost turned around twice. Once on the highway, once at the exit. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears, but I kept driving because I needed to know. I saved $11,000 in my emergency fund by bringing my own lunch to work every day for 3 years. Ham sandwich, apple, bag of pretzels. Nothing fancy, but it added up. And I tell you this because when you're driving toward a moment that might blow up your entire life, you think about strange things. You think about ham sandwiches and savings accounts and all the small choices that led you to this exact moment. 247 Maple Ridge Lane was not what I expected. It was a modest Cape Cod-style house, powder blue with white trim, set back from the street behind a well-maintained lawn. The garden was still blooming with late roses, pink and red and yellow. There was a ceramic frog sitting on the porch beside a pot of chrysanthemums. The welcome mat by the front door said, "Bless this home," in cheerful script. This was not the house of people who chose vodka over their son. This looked like the house of people who watched Jeopardy every night at 7 and sent Christmas cards with photos of their grandchildren. I sat in my car for 5 minutes just staring at that house. Then I made myself get out, made myself walk up the path, made myself ring the doorbell. For a long moment, nothing happened. I almost convinced myself no one was home, that I could leave and pretend I'd never come here, pretend I'd never found those letters. Then the door opened. The woman standing there was in her mid-60s, with gray hair cut in a neat bob and reading glasses pushed up on her head. She was wearing a floral apron that said, "World's Okayest Cook," the kind of apron you buy as a joke gift and end up using every day. Her eyes were bright and alert. Her hands were steady. She looked nothing like an alcoholic. "Can I help you?" she asked, polite but cautious, the way anyone would be when a stranger shows up at their door. I opened my mouth to speak and realized I had no idea what to say. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head 100 times during the drive, but now that I was here, every word evaporated. "My name is Hannah Calderon," I finally managed. I'm engaged to your son, Garrett. I know this is unexpected and I'm sorry to just show up like this, but I stopped talking because of the way her face changed. The color drained out of it. Her hand shot out to grip the doorframe, like she needed something to hold her up. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Ma'am?" I said. "Mrs. Ostrowski? Are you okay?" She shook her head slowly. Her eyes were filling with tears. "That's impossible," she whispered. That's impossible. "I don't understand. What's impossible?" She looked at me, really looked at me, like she was trying to determine if I was real or some kind of hallucination. "Our son Garrett is dead," she said. "He died 3 years ago." The ground shifted under my feet. The porch tilted. I grabbed the railing to keep from falling. Dead? The man I had kissed goodbye yesterday morning was dead? The man whose ring I was wearing? The man who was supposedly at a financial conference in Philadelphia right now? But Dolores Ostrowski wasn't finished, and what she told me next made me wish I had never knocked on that door. "You need to come inside," she said, her voice trembling. "You need to meet my husband, and then you need to tell us everything, because someone has been lying to all of us." The inside of the Ostrowski home smelled like cinnamon and coffee. There were family photos on every wall, graduations, holidays, a younger Garrett blowing out birthday candles. A cross hung above the fireplace. The furniture was old but well cared for, the kind of furniture people keep for 30 years because it still works fine and holds too many memories to replace. Dolores led me to the kitchen table and called for her husband. Her voice cracked when she said his name. "Walter, Walter, come here now, please." Heavy footsteps came from somewhere in the back of the house. Walter Ostrowski appeared in the doorway, 68 years old, broad shoulders, thinning gray hair, walking with a slight limp that spoke of old injuries. He had the weathered hands of a man who'd worked physical labor his whole life. Later, I would learn he'd spent 31 years at a steel mill before it closed down and forced him into early retirement. He looked at me, then at his wife, then back at me. "Dolly, what's going on? Who is this?" "She says she's engaged to Garrett," Dolores said. The words came out like she was choking on them. Walter's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, hope, pain, and finally, something that looked like the beginning of understanding. The terrible kind of understanding that comes when pieces you didn't know were missing suddenly fall into place. He had to sit down, pulled out a kitchen chair, and lowered himself into it like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. "Tell us everything," he said. "From the beginning, how you met him, when you met him, all of it." So I did. I told them about the birthday party in March 2021, about the 2.5 years of dating, about the proposal, the ring, the wedding planned for 6 weeks from now at the Radisson-Lackawanna station. I told them about the story Garrett had told me, that they were alcoholics, that they'd abandoned him, that reconnecting with them would be too painful. With every word I spoke, I watched their hearts break a little more. When I finished, Dolores was crying silently, tears running down her cheeks and dripping onto her world's okayest cook apron. Walter's jaw was clenched so tight I thought he might crack a tooth. "He told you we were alcoholics," Walter said slowly, "that we abandoned him." "Yes, I'm so sorry. I believed him. We've never had a drink in this house," Dolores interrupted. "Walter's father was an alcoholic, died of liver failure at 52. We made a promise when we got married. Not a drop of alcohol would ever touch our lips. 43 years, and we've kept that promise." The irony was so bitter I could taste it. Garrett had projected his own growing drinking problem onto his parents. He'd used a trauma that wasn't even real to keep me away from the truth. 3 years ago, Walter said, Garrett came to visit us. It was October, a Sunday. He sat right where you're sitting now and told us he was in serious trouble. The story came out in pieces, Walter and Dolores trading off like they'd rehearsed it, though I knew they hadn't. They'd probably just told it to each other so many times, trying to make sense of it that it had become a kind of script. Garrett had told them he'd witnessed something terrible, a crime connected to organized crime, he said. He claimed he'd been placed in witness protection and had to disappear completely. For their safety and his, they needed to believe he was dead. No contact, no calls, no letters. He'd cried, held his mother, told them he loved them and that this was the hardest thing he'd ever had to do. And then he'd asked for money. For his survival in hiding, Dolores said, her voice hollow. That's what he called it, survival money. Walter stood up slowly and walked to a desk in the corner of the living room. He pulled out a folder, thick, worn at the edges, held together with a rubber band. He brought it back to the table and set it in front of me. "I kept everything," he said. "Every wire transfer, every bank statement, every receipt, because some part of me always hoped there would be an explanation. Some part of me always believed our boy would come back and tell us it was all necessary, that he had no choice." I opened the folder with trembling hands. The documents inside told a story of financial destruction, wire transfers from 2021, 2022, 2023, small amounts at first, 2,000 here, 3,000 there, then larger, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 at a time. The total, calculated in Walter's neat handwriting on the inside cover of the folder, $215,847. I stared at that number until it blurred. "Your retirement," I whispered. "All of it," Walter confirmed. $168,000. Every penny we'd saved in 40 years of working, gone. And when that wasn't enough, Dolores added quietly, we refinanced the house, took out a second mortgage, another $47,000. They were going to lose their home. The house with the ceramic frog and the rose garden and the welcome mat that said, "Bless this home." They were going to lose it because their son had stolen everything they had. But the worst part, the part that made me want to scream, was still coming. "He told us why he had to run," Walter said. His eyes met mine and I saw something terrible in them. "He told us it was because of you." "What?" "His girlfriend." That's what he said. His girlfriend was connected to dangerous people. He said he had to disappear to protect you both, but he needed money to start over somewhere safe. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table. "For 3 years, Dolores said, I've hated a woman I never met. I've blamed her for taking my son away. Every night I prayed that something terrible would happen to this woman who ruined our family." She reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were cold and trembling. "And that woman was you," she said. "You were a victim too, just like us." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The man I was supposed to marry had turned his own parents against a fictional version of me, while simultaneously using me as a prop in his perfect boyfriend performance. My mother always said I had terrible taste in men. I used to think she was being dramatic. Turns out she was being generous. Walter pulled another document from the folder, a power of attorney form, his and Dolores' signatures at the bottom, granting Garrett control over their finances in case something happened while he was in hiding. "Look at the date," Walter said. The notary stamp showed April 2022, more than 6 months after Garrett had supposedly died and vanished into witness protection. "We didn't sign this," Dolores said. "I've never seen this document before today. Those signatures aren't ours." Forgery. On top of everything else, fraud, theft, emotional manipulation, he'd forged their signatures on legal documents. That was a federal crime. Multiple federal crimes, probably. "There's one more thing," I said, remembering suddenly. "A few weeks ago, Garrett got a phone call from Wilkes-Barre Medical Center. He said it was spam, a wrong number." Walter and Dolores exchanged a look that broke something inside me. "I had a health scare last month," Dolores said quietly. "Irregular heartbeat. They kept me overnight at Wilkes-Barre General for observation." Walter was so worried. He found an old number in his phone. He thought maybe, somehow, if he called it. "I called every day for a week," Walter said. His voice cracked. "I knew it was stupid. I knew Garrett was gone, but I thought if there was any chance he'd answer, any chance he'd know his mother was in the hospital." Garrett had seen those calls. He'd seen Wilkes-Barre Medical Center on his phone while his mother was lying in a hospital bed with heart problems. And he'd done nothing, said nothing, just told me it was spam and went back to planning our wedding. That was the moment Walter broke. I saw it happen. Watch the realization hit him like a physical blow. 3 years of denial, 3 years of making excuses, 3 years of telling himself that his son must have had good reasons, that someday it would all make sense. It wasn't going to make sense. There were no good reasons. His son was a monster. Walter stood up from the table, swayed, knocked over his chair, reaching for something to steady himself. "Walter?" Dolores was on her feet instantly. "Walter, what's wrong?" He pressed his hand to his chest. His face had gone gray. Sweat was beading on his forehead. "Can't breathe right," he gasped. "Chest tight." And then he went down. He hit the kitchen floor hard, and Dolores started screaming his name over and over, dropping to her knees beside him. I had my phone out before I even realized I'd moved, fingers finding 911 like they had a mind of their own. 911, what's your emergency? I need an ambulance. A man is having a heart attack. He's 68 years old, conscious but in distress, chest pain, difficulty breathing. What's the address, ma'am? I looked wildly around the kitchen, spotted an envelope on the counter, read the address off it. 247 Maple Ridge Lane, Wilkes-Barre. Please hurry. 7 minutes. That's how long it took for the ambulance to arrive. 7 minutes that felt like 7 hours, with Walter on the floor and Dolores holding his hand and me trying to remember every piece of first aid training I'd ever had. Stay calm. Keep him still. Loosen his collar. Talk to him. Keep him conscious. Stay with me, Mr. Ostrowski. Help is coming. Just keep breathing. In and out. That's it. In and out. The ambulance pulled into the driveway with lights flashing. 2 EMTs rushed in, took over, started working on Walter with professional efficiency that made me want to cry with relief. But then I noticed something strange. Another car had pulled up behind the ambulance, a dark blue sedan, and 2 people were getting out, a man and a woman, dressed in business casual, not medical uniforms. The woman reached into her jacket and pulled out something that caught the light, a badge. The EMTs were loading Walter onto a stretcher when the 2 strangers walked through the front door of the Ostrowski home like they owned the place. The man was maybe 40, Latino, with a close-cropped beard and sharp eyes that took in everything at once. The woman was younger, red hair pulled back in a ponytail, carrying herself with the kind of quiet authority that comes from years of training. FBI, the man said, holding up his badge. I'm Agent Reyes. This is Agent Whitmore. We're looking for Walter and Dolores Ostrowski. Dolores spun around from where she'd been watching the EMTs work on her husband. That's my husband on that stretcher. What do you want? What's happening? Agent Whitmore moved toward her, hands raised in a calming gesture. Ma'am, we're not here to cause trouble. We've been investigating a financial fraud case, and your family came up in our investigation. We just need to ask some questions. Agent Reyes's eyes landed on me. I must have looked like a deer in headlights. I certainly felt like one. And you are? He asked. My mouth felt full of cotton. My name is Hannah Calderon. I'm engaged to their son, Garrett Ostrowski. The 2 agents exchanged a look, a significant look, the kind of look that told me they knew something I didn't, and whatever it was would change everything. Ma'am, Agent Reyes said carefully, there is no Garrett Ostrowski, at least not legally. The room was already spinning, but somehow it started spinning faster. The man you know as Garrett Ostrowski is actually Garrett Brennan Wolchak. He's wanted in New Jersey and Delaware for wire fraud, mail fraud, identity theft, and elder financial exploitation. We've been tracking him for almost 2 years. I heard the words. I understood the words, but my brain refused to process them. Garrett wasn't even his real name. Everything, every single thing about the man I'd planned to marry was a fabrication. We need to get my husband to the hospital, Dolores said, her voice rising with panic. Please, can we do this later? Of course, Agent Whitmore said quickly. Go with him, we'll follow. But Miss Calderon, she turned to me. We need to talk soon. The next few hours passed in a blur. The ambulance took Walter to Wilkes-Barre General Hospital. Dolores rode with him, holding his hand through the whole trip. I followed in my car with the FBI agents following me. It felt like a strange, terrible parade. At the hospital, the doctors confirmed that Walter had suffered stress-induced angina. Not a full heart attack, thank God, but serious enough to require monitoring and medication. The shock of discovering his son's betrayal had literally broken his heart. Not completely, but enough to land him in a hospital bed with wires attached to his chest and a monitor beeping steadily beside him. While Dolores sat with Walter, I sat in a small conference room with Agent Reyes and Agent Whitmore. They had coffee. I had questions, more questions than I'd ever had in my life. Tell me everything, I said. I need to know who I've been living with. Agent Reyes opened a folder. I was starting to hate folders, and spread several photographs across the table. Garrett's face stared up at me from different angles. Different years, driver's licenses from 3 states with 3 different names. Garrett Brennan Wolchak, Agent Reyes began. Born in 1989 in Newark, New Jersey, started running financial scams in his early 20s. Small stuff at first, fake investment schemes, bogus business loans. Then he discovered a more reliable target. Family, Agent Whitmore said, his own family. The pattern was always the same, they explained. Garrett would find a woman to date seriously. Someone trusting, someone kind, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. He'd isolate her from his family using stories of abuse, addiction, or estrangement. Then, while his girlfriend was distracted with the relationship, he'd go to work on his real targets. His own parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone with savings. He tells them he's in trouble, Agent Reyes said. Witness protection, fleeing from dangerous people, medical emergencies. The story changes, but the result is always the same. They drain their savings trying to help him. By the time they realize what's happening, he's gone. New name, new city, new victim. How many? I asked. How many families? Before the Ostrowskis? 3 that we know of. Total financial damage, over $600,000. $600,000. Plus the $215,000 from Walter and Dolores. That was more than $800,000 stolen from people who loved him, from people who trusted him. Agent Whitmore slid another photograph across the table. An elderly woman smiling in what looked like a Christmas photo. She had kind eyes and silver hair. Gladys Morrow, Agent Whitmore said quietly, 78 years old, lived in Trenton, New Jersey. Garrett was her grandson, or rather, he pretended to be after her real grandson died in a car accident in 2015. He stepped into the dead man's identity and convinced Gladys he was family. She gave him everything. Her savings, her house, her jewelry, everything. What happened to her? Agent Whitmore's jaw tightened. She died of a stroke 18 months ago. Alone, in a state-run care facility because she had nothing left. She died believing her grandson hated her because he stopped visiting once the money ran out. She left him everything in her will, not knowing he'd already taken it all. I thought I might throw up. I actually leaned over, put my head between my knees, and focused on breathing until the nausea passed. The man who brought me flowers for no reason. The man who held me when I cried. The man who said he couldn't wait to spend the rest of his life with me. He was a predator who let an old woman die alone and afraid. Miss Calderon, Agent Reyes said gently, we need your help. Anything. The word came out before I could think. Whatever you need. They explained the plan. They had enough evidence to arrest Garrett. More than enough. But they wanted to catch him cleanly with maximum impact. They wanted him on tape, incriminating himself. And they wanted to make sure he couldn't talk his way out of it later. You're scheduled for a wedding cake tasting on Monday afternoon, Agent Whitmore said, at the Radisson-Lackawanna station in Scranton. Is that correct? Yes, 2:15. We want you to wear a wire. Go to the appointment, act normal, get him talking about money, about your future plans, about the joint accounts. We'll have agents positioned throughout the building. The moment we have what we need, we move in. 3 days. They wanted me to act normal for 3 days, to sleep next to a federal fugitive, to kiss him good morning, to pretend I didn't know that everything about him was a lie. Can you do that? Agent Reyes asked. I thought about Walter in his hospital bed. I thought about Dolores crying in the kitchen. I thought about Gladys Morrow dying alone because a monster stole her family and her savings and her dignity. Yes, I said, I can do that. The next 48 hours were the longest of my life. Garrett came home Sunday night, cheerful and relaxed from his conference. He kissed me at the door, told me he'd missed me, asked if I'd had a good weekend. I smiled and said yes. I'd just run some wedding errands, nothing exciting. I asked about his trip. He told me stories about panels and networking events that had probably never happened. We watched a movie that night, some comedy I couldn't focus on. He laughed at all the funny parts. I laughed when he laughed, a few seconds late, hoping he wouldn't notice. We went to bed. He fell asleep within minutes, snoring softly like he always did. I lay awake until 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, counting the hours until Monday. Monday morning, Garrett picked out my outfit for the tasting, a blue dress he'd always liked on me. You look beautiful, babe, he said, straightening my collar. His hands were gentle. His smile was warm. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled back. "Thank you. Ready to pick our wedding cake?" The drive to the Radisson took 22 minutes. Garrett talked the whole way about flavor combinations. He was leaning toward raspberry filling with vanilla buttercream. I made agreeable noises at appropriate intervals. The wire taped to my chest felt like it weighed 100 pounds. The tasting room was elegant. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, sample plates arranged like works of art. The catering manager, a cheerful woman named Deborah, greeted us with enthusiasm and started walking us through the options. Red velvet, lemon chiffon, chocolate ganache. Garrett sampled each one thoughtfully, discussing texture and presentation like a man planning the happiest day of his life. I steered the conversation where the FBI needed it to go. "Babe, I've been thinking about our savings," I said casually, accepting a forkful of carrot cake. "That $8,000 you invested. You never told me the details. What kind of return are we looking at?" Garrett smiled. "Don't worry about it, Hannah. I've got it all under control. By the time we're back from Costa Rica, that money will have doubled. Trust me." "I do trust you. I just want to understand our finances better. You know, since we're going to be married," he launched into an explanation. Vague, full of buzzwords, completely fictional. But he used specific numbers, mentioned specific accounts, said enough that any prosecutor would have a field day. I saw Agent Reyes appear in the doorway of the tasting room. Behind him, Agent Whitmore. Behind her, 2 uniformed officers. Garrett noticed them a second later. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Garrett Wolchek," Agent Reyes said, his voice cutting through the soft music playing in the background. "You're under arrest. Put your hands behind your back." Garrett's face went through a rapid series of transformations. Confusion, recognition, fear, and then, finally, something cold and calculating. The face of the real man beneath the mask. He tried to run. He made it exactly 4 steps before Agent Whitmore had him on the ground, face pressed against the cream-colored carpet, hands wrenched behind his back. The catering manager, Deborah, dropped a plate of red velvet samples. The crash was almost theatrical. Garrett twisted his head to look at me, cheeks smashed against the floor. "Hannah, baby, this is a mistake. Whatever they told you, whatever you think you know," I looked down at him. This man I'd loved, this man I'd trusted, this man who wasn't even real. "The only mistake was mine," I said. "I thought you were human." They hauled him to his feet, read him his rights, walked him out in handcuffs past the hotel staff, past the guests in the lobby, past everyone who would now know that the charming groom-to-be was a federal criminal. I stood alone in the tasting room, surrounded by half-eaten cake samples and the scattered remains of a life that had never existed. The wedding was off, obviously. But my story with the Ostrowski family, that was just beginning. Before we get to the end, if this story has meant something to you, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a second to subscribe and drop a comment below. Every single one makes a difference, and honestly, this community keeps me going. Thank you. Now, the ending you've been waiting for. The trial took 8 months. Garrett Brennan Wolchak, I still couldn't call him by his real name without feeling sick, was charged with 47 federal counts: wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, elder financial exploitation across 3 states, plus the forged power of attorney documents, which added another 5 counts of their own. He tried to fight it at first, hired a fancy lawyer, probably with money stolen from one of his victims, but the evidence was overwhelming. The wire transfers, the bank records, the recordings from my wire, testimony from 4 families he'd destroyed. 3 months before the trial was set to begin, he changed his plea to guilty. His lawyer called it accepting responsibility. I called it realizing he was going to lose. The sentencing hearing was held on a Tuesday morning in March. The courtroom was full. I was there. Walter and Dolores were there. Walter, using a cane now, but strong, his heart healed enough to watch his son face justice. The families of his other victims were there too, some in person, some appearing by video from New Jersey and Delaware. One by one, they told their stories. The savings accounts emptied, the houses lost, the relationships destroyed, a daughter who hadn't spoken to her mother in years because Garrett had convinced them each that the other had betrayed them. and Gladys Morrow's niece, a woman named Patricia, who'd spent 2 years trying to piece together what had happened to her aunt. She submitted a written statement that the judge read aloud. My Aunt Gladys died believing she had been abandoned by the people she loved most. She died confused and alone in a facility that smelled like bleach and sadness. She deserved better. She deserved so much better, and the man who did this to her should never be allowed to hurt anyone else ever again. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it simple. I thought I was planning a wedding, I said. Instead, I discovered that the man I loved didn't exist. He was a character in a story designed to take everything from everyone who trusted him. I lost 2.5 years of my life to that story. The Ostrowskis lost their retirement. Gladys Morrow lost her life. I hope the court ensures he has plenty of time to think about what he's done. The judge was not merciful. 14 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for 11 years. Restitution ordered in the amount of $847,000, though everyone knew the victims would be lucky to see a fraction of that. When the sentence was announced, Garrett showed no emotion, just stared straight ahead like a man who'd already checked out, already planning his next scheme from behind bars. I hoped prison would change him. I suspected it wouldn't. But that wasn't my problem anymore. The FBI recovered $67,000 from accounts Garrett had hidden under various names. Most of it went to Gladys Morrow's estate. Patricia used it to pay off the debts her aunt had accumulated in her final years. The rest was split among the victims. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. But the community stepped up in ways I never expected. I organized a fundraiser through my dental practice. Dr. Morrison let us use the waiting room for a weekend, and we set up donation jars and a GoFundMe page. My mother's church held a special collection. Local businesses in Wilkes-Barre, once they heard the story, contributed whatever they could. In 3 weeks, we raised $43,000. I drove to 247 Maple Ridge Lane on a Saturday morning and handed Walter Ostrowski a check. He stared at it for a long time without speaking. Then he started to cry. In 40 years of marriage, Dolores told me later, she had seen her husband cry exactly 3 times. The day his mother died, the day Garrett told them he was dead, and the day a woman he'd never met, a woman his son had tried to destroy, gave them back a piece of what they'd lost. "We can keep the house," Walter said finally, his voice rough. "Dolly, we can keep the house." I wanted to tell them it was nothing, that anyone would have done the same. But that wasn't true. Not everyone would have. Not everyone cared enough to try. I cared. I cared about these 2 people who had been strangers to me until a Friday morning that changed everything. I cared about them more than I'd ever cared about the man who was supposed to be their son. Funny how life works sometimes. The wedding at the Radisson was canceled, obviously. I lost my deposit, $3,000 down the drain. My mother said she'd pay me back. I told her to donate it to a charity for elderly fraud victims instead. She did, and she added another $500 of her own money on top. Speaking of my mother, she has been insufferably smug for the past 8 months. Every phone call includes some version of, "I told you to look at that background check, Hannah." Every family dinner features at least one reference to, "That time I tried to warn you about what's his name." I finally told her, "Mom, you were right. Now please, for the love of God, let it go." She will never let it go. Honestly, she earned it. These days, my Sundays look different than they used to. I drive to Wilkes-Barre, to a powder blue Cape Cod house with a ceramic frog on the porch and roses in the garden. I eat lunch with Walter and Dolores, usually pierogi that Dolores has been teaching me to make, though mine never turn out quite as good as hers. We watch Jeopardy at 7. We talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes my mother comes with me. She and Dolores have become friends, bonded over their shared experience of having children who don't listen to perfectly good advice. They trade recipes and complaints and stories about kids these days. It's actually kind of sweet, even when I'm the target of their gentle mockery. Walter calls me the daughter we always wanted. The first time he said it, I cried. The second time, I laughed. Now it just feels like the truth. I was looking for a husband. I found a family instead. I haven't dated anyone since Garrett. Not because I'm scared, though maybe I'm a little scared. but because I'm not in a hurry anymore. I spent 2.5 years with a man who didn't exist, trying to build a future that was never real. I'm done rushing. I'm done ignoring red flags because I want something to work out. When the right person comes along, if the right person comes along, I'll know. And this time, I'll listen to my mother when she offers to run a background check. Some people hide their families because their families are difficult. I understand that. I've seen it. Addiction and abuse and estrangement are real. And sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from the people who raised you. But some people hide their families because their families know exactly who they really are. If someone you love refuses to let you meet the people who shaped them, ask yourself why. Push for answers. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. The truth always comes out eventually. It found its way to a small blue house in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, on a Friday morning when a woman with a cracked windshield and a breaking heart knocked on a stranger's door. It will find its way to you, too. Thank you so much for staying with me until the end. Stories like this one remind me why I do this. Because the truth matters, and so does justice. If you want more stories like this, there's another one waiting for you right on your screen. Click it, and I'll see you there.